Hello and welcome back to Grave Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into dark, chilling tales, whispered straight from the grave, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. Relax your mind. Let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. I'm sorry. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound like the kind of lie people post online when they want attention. But made-up stories don't get 2 black SUVs parked outside your house every night for 2 weeks. Made-up stories don't get men with earpieces pretending they're just neighbors while they stare at your windows and act like you're the one being weird. Believe me or don't. I'm not writing this to convince you. I'm writing because I can't keep it in my head anymore, and because the road near my old house is still blocked off. They tell people it's a gas leak. There is no gas line there. Our house was electric everything because Dina was afraid of open flames. She said indoor fire felt primitive and wrong. She'd say it like she was half joking, but she never let it go. No candles, no matches, no stove flame, nothing. I used to think she was being dramatic. Now it's funny in a sick way, because the night everything happened, there were candles on our table. Dinah and I had been married 10.5 months. We were that embarrassing kind of in love. The kind where if one of us ran to the store for milk, the other would already be texting before they even got to the parking lot. We had pet names. We had inside jokes. We took dumb photos and kept them because we looked happy in them. We also fought. Bad fights. Loud fights. Fights that started over nothing and somehow turned into something personal. Dishes, my work, her tone, my tone, her saying I wasn't listening. Me saying she always sounded like she was reading normal emotions out of a manual. That line made her cry. I apologized for it for 2 straight days. I meant it too. I didn't know then how close I was to the truth. The night it happened, I came home late from the research institute. I was shaking, and not from the cold. I was shaking from caffeine, hunger, and that sharp buzzing feeling you get when you've been staring at a problem too long and then something inside it suddenly gives way. I had done it. Not built the machine, obviously, but I had the math. The ugly part. The part that made other people in my field roll their eyes or get quiet and change the subject. The part everyone said couldn't be done. Call it a star drive, call it faster than light, call it whatever sounds good in a headline. I don't know what they'll call it if they ever show it to you, if they ever admit it exists. All I know is I had the proof in my bag, notes, derivations, the kind of work you don't email, you don't upload, you don't leave on a shared drive. You keep it on paper, close to your body, because even if you trust your coworkers, you don't trust systems. I walked into the house expecting the usual. Dina on the couch with a book. Dina in the kitchen with music on low. Dina half asleep in bed, hair spread across the pillow like ink. Instead, Dina had dinner ready. That should have scared me right away because Dina didn't cook when she was happy. Dina cooked when she was trying to hold herself together. Cooking was something she did when she needed control, when she needed to prove to herself she could create order in a world that wasn't behaving. The table was set. There were candles, cheap ones. One had burned down into a sad little blob in its glass holder. Pasta, garlic, wine poured into 2 glasses like she'd been waiting. She was wearing my shirt, bare legs under it, hair still wet from the shower. God, she was beautiful. That's one of the worst parts. Not that she lied, not that she used me, not even that I was a job to her. The worst part is that I can still see her like that and feel something in my chest reach for her. She looked up when I came in. "You're late," she said. I meant to say something normal, something soft. I meant to kiss her and tell her I had news. What came out of my mouth was, "You're scary." I said it like a joke, like flirting, like the kind of thing you say when your wife is trying too hard to make a moment romantic. She laughed, but it didn't land right. It was half a beat too late. Like she had to decide to laugh. You know what I mean if you've lived with someone long enough. You learn the small tells, not the big ones. How they breathe when they're annoyed. How they say fine when it isn't fine. The difference between a kiss meant for sex and a kiss meant for forgiveness. That laugh was wrong. I noticed it. I felt it. And I still chose to ignore it because I was tired and hungry, and I wanted my life to feel normal for 5 minutes. Dinah walked over and kissed me before I even set my bag down. It was a hard kiss. Teeth. Wine. Salt. Like she was angry at my mouth. Then there was a bitter taste. I pulled back and started to say, "What the hell is that?" Or I tried to. My tongue went thick. My jaw felt heavy. My hands went numb like the blood had drained out of them. The bag slid off my shoulder and hit the floor with a dull thump. Dana caught me before I hit the ground. Caught me like I weighed nothing. That was another thing she didn't hide well enough. Dina was strong, but not like that. Not lift a grown man with one arm while he goes limp. Strong, not without strain, not without surprise. She lowered me onto the kitchen tile gently, like I was drunk and she was trying not to make noise, like she was worried the neighbors would hear a scene. I couldn't move. Not like I was pinned down, not like panic freezing me. I mean, my body simply didn't respond. Like someone unplugged me from the wall. I could breathe barely. I could see, I could hear. I could feel the tile cold against my cheek. Dinah sat on the floor and pulled my head into her lap. She wiped spit from my chin with her thumb. That almost broke me. I know how that sounds. Pathetic. But when someone poisons you and still wipes your mouth because she can't stand to see you messy, your mind doesn't know where to put the feeling. It doesn't know how to categorize it. Love and violence don't belong in the same gesture, and yet there it was. She started crying. Not pretty crying, not movie crying, ugly crying, silent shoulders shaking, trying not to make noise. Dina always tried to keep her feelings contained, even when she couldn't, even then. And she explained, but only enough. People in stories give speeches. They connect all the dots. Real people don't. Real people choke on half of it, repeat themselves, skip the parts that feel too big to say out loud. She told me she wasn't from here, not from Earth. She said it like it was the simplest fact, like she'd finally gotten tired of pretending. She told me she'd been sent because of me. Not because I was special right now. Because I might become special. Because I might open a door. Her people had ways of predicting which humans were likely to make certain breakthroughs. My name came up. She was assigned to get close, to steer me, slow me down, push me left when I should have gone right. And she did. There was the job offer I didn't take because Dina said it felt wrong. The paper I abandoned because she picked a fight the night I was about to submit it. The night she begged me to come to bed when I was hours away from finishing something. The trip she insisted we take right before a deadline. The way she always seemed to know when I was close to something important, even when I didn't say a word. The fights. So many fights. She told me they'd ordered her to kill me months earlier. She didn't do it. Not then. She stalled. She delayed. She tried to find another way. She said it like it was a mercy, like it proved something about her. But the way she said it also made it clear how little her love mattered once her orders were fixed. She hadn't betrayed them. She had only postponed. Then she said something that still makes me cold when I hear it in my head. Humans couldn't be allowed out there. We played with fire. We moved too fast. We were too angry, too quick to turn pain into tools and tools into weapons. She said that part like she hated us. And then she touched my face, soft, like she was checking whether love was still there or whether it had finally worn away. Her plan was simple. Kill me, take the math, get picked up. My lab would burn in a way that looked like an accident, like my fault. Clean. Well, that was the word she used. Clean. My wife sat there holding me the way she used to after my panic attacks. Except now she was the reason my body wouldn't move. I couldn't speak. Couldn't lift an arm. Couldn't even bite my tongue hard enough to make my mouth do something. And you're probably thinking I was blind. That I was some dead-eyed scientist who could do equations but couldn't see what was sleeping next to him. I wasn't blind. I knew. Not with proof. Not with some dramatic discovery. I knew in the way husbands know things and then hate themselves for knowing. I knew in small moments that didn't fit. The first crack was a cut on her hand that closed while I was still reaching for paper towels. It was open, bleeding, and then it wasn't. She laughed and told me I'd imagined how bad it had been. The second crack was waking up and finding her barefoot in the backyard at 3 a.m, whispering into the dark. Every insect in the grass went silent around her. Not all at once, like a circle of quiet around her body. She turned when I stepped outside and her smile looked practiced. There were other things. Little things. Things you can explain once or twice until explaining them starts to feel dumber than the truth. Eventually, I called an old friend of my dad's, the kind of man who'd always been around in the background when I was a kid, who seemed to know things he wasn't supposed to. I sat with my phone in my hand for almost an hour before I dialed, because making that call meant saying the thought out loud. It meant admitting that the person in my bed might not be my wife in any normal sense. He answered, and he didn't sound surprised. That scared me more than anything Dinah ever did. He asked me 3 questions, calm and precise, like a checklist. By the third question, I understood he already knew what she was, or at least what category she belonged to. Then he said, "Do not confront her. Do not try to leave. If she thinks you know, you won't survive the night." That sentence changed everything. It turned Dina from a strange mystery into a placement, a tool, a countdown. Sooner or later, she was going to finish the job she'd been sent to do. which is exactly what she was doing on my kitchen floor. After that call, I met the others, men and women in normal clothes with dead faces. They came into my life like they'd always been allowed to, asking questions nobody should know to ask, not just about Dina, but about us, our sex life, our fights, her blood, her sleep. The words she used when she was angry, whether she ever got sick, whether animals acted strange around her, whether lights flickered when she touched them, whether I ever woke up and found her watching me. Nobody looked shocked enough to be learning it for the first time. That was when I understood they'd been chasing this for years. Not aliens in the movie sense. Traces, shadows, bad transmissions, houses cleaned too well, scientists who vanished. Bodies found with organs that didn't fail the way human organs fail. Nothing whole, nothing useful. They didn't need proof something was out there. They already had enough to be sure. What they needed was one of them alive. But even that wasn't the real prize. The real prize was whatever came to pick them up. Because a ship isn't theory. A ship is hardware, propulsion, shielding, power, navigation, materials you can't make on Earth yet. Control systems, the actual machinery of how they moved through space. A ship meant answers you could hold in your hands. So they made me bait. The breakthrough was real, but the timing was staged. The notebook in my bag was bait. The public lectures scheduled next week was bait. The hints I dropped at work were bait. The house was the trap. The plumbing problems we suddenly had. Trap. The new water heater Dina hated because it made the closet smell like metals. Trap. The landscaping crew that tore up our backyard for 3 days while Dina complained they were killing her lavender. Trap. Under our house, buried in a way I never would have noticed, was enough human desperation to pull something impossible down close, if she called it. Only if she didn't run. Only if she loved me enough to stay long enough to say goodbye. Do you understand how disgusting that is? I used the thing I hated most about her. I used us. At some point, while Dina was crying with my head in her lap, she looked down at my face and saw something shift. Not fear, not pain, guilt. Marriage is a curse that way. You can't hide in your own face. The person who knows you best can read you even when you're silent. Her hand stopped stroking my hair. She whispered, "No." Just that. No. Then, "How long?" I couldn't answer. My mouth wouldn't move, but she didn't need the answer. She looked at the table, the candles, the windows, the bag on the floor, and she understood. I saw my wife die right there, without anyone shooting her, and before anything came from the sky. Whatever small piece of us she believed was real, whatever part she'd kept clean in her own head, broke. Because it wasn't clean. Our marriage was a trap with the wedding photos on the wall and her hair in my shower drain. She had been using me. I had been using her. We both had our excuses. We both had our reasons we thought were noble. But when she touched my face, it still felt like home. Then the lights went out. Not like a normal power outage. Not like the house went dark. The dark had weight. It pressed down like water. The windows filled with white, like the night outside had been replaced with something bright and blank. The house made a deep animal sound, like the whole structure was groaning from the inside. Metal screamed in the walls. My teeth hurt. Every filling in my mouth felt like it was vibrating. Blood ran out of my nose and onto the tile, warm against the cold. Dinah crawled off me and tried to stand. She moved toward the back door like she thought she could still leave. Like she thought if she ran fast enough, she could beat whatever was arriving. She got one hand on the frame. Then the sky tore open. I didn't see a ship clearly. I saw shapes where the stars should have been. I saw the yard bending upward like it wanted to peel off the earth. I saw Dinah in that white light, one hand gripping the doorframe, turning her head to look back at me. She could have killed me then. It would have taken nothing. A hand to my throat, a twist, a choice. She didn't. And then the world punched itself inside out. That's the only way I can describe it, like reality folded wrong and then snapped. I woke up in a hospital bed with tubes in my arm and two government men pretending to be doctors. They had the posture of people who weren't used to lying in scrubs. They asked me the same questions over and over in different orders, like they were checking whether my answers stayed consistent. One of them kept saying my name too much, like he was trying to remind me who I was. Eventually, one of them told me, "We got it." That's what he said. Like it was a package. Intact enough. I didn't even feel relief. I felt empty. I didn't care if they got a ship or a piece of one. I didn't care if my work changed the world or got buried forever. All I could see was Dinah's face when she realized what I'd done. I asked about her. They avoided it at first. They gave me the kind of answers people give when someone is dead and they don't want to say it yet. I asked again, then again. Finally, one of them looked at the other, and the other gave a tiny nod, like permission. "She got out," the first man said. I laughed because for a second my brain thought he meant she'd escaped the hospital room, like she'd walked out of a door. Then he clarified, flat and careful. He said she had shed the human layer like it was clothing. Like my wife was something she could peel off and leave behind. The other man said, "You don't want to see what was underneath." I asked anyway. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed the pain to be complete. Maybe because part of me still wanted to defend her, and I needed that part killed too. They told me what she looked like underneath. They didn't use poetic words. They used the kind of blunt language people use when they're trying not to throw up. I could hear the disgust in their voices. One of them said, "Sorry you had to live with that." And something deep in my chest twisted in a way I still can't explain. Not just grief, not just horror, something worse. Because even after everything, after the poison, after the trap, after the sky opening up, my first thought wasn't good. My first thought was that I'd lost her. Not the thing underneath, not the mission, not the lie. Her. The version of her that laughed the right way, that warmed her feet on my calves in bed, that texted me before I reached the store, that cried when I accused her of not understanding human emotion. And then I remembered the candles, the fire she hated, the dinner she'd made because she was trying not to fall apart, and I realized she hadn't set that table for me. She'd set it for a goodbye she never planned to survive. Now, every night, the SUVs come back. They sit outside like quiet animals. They make sure I don't leave. They make sure nobody comes too close. They pretend I'm safe. But sometimes, just before dawn, I wake up with the taste of wine in my mouth, and I'm sure I can hear something moving in the yard, careful and familiar, like it still knows the way to my back door. Story 2. I met my girlfriend on a game show called Doors. That sentence sounds like something you'd say with a grin, like a weird lucky break you brag about at parties. If I'd met her the normal way, through friends, at work, on an app, I could tell this story like it was funny, like it was chaotic but harmless. It wasn't. 7 months after I graduated high school, I was working full-time at a McDonald's and telling myself it was temporary. That's what you tell yourself when you can't see any other door out. I was trying to save for community college, trying to get away from my parents' place, trying to build a life that didn't feel like a trap. One night, after a shift, I saw a flyer taped to a streetlight near the bus stop. The paper was cheap, already curling at the edges from damp air. The print looked like it had been done at a home office store. It said, "Looking for a game show participant. Win big, up to $100,000. Call today." There was a phone number at the bottom. No logo, no network name, no website. Nothing that should have convinced a sane person. But I wasn't sane in the way you need to be to avoid bad decisions. I was tired, broke, and 20 seconds away from believing anything that promised money. So I took a photo of it and called the number when I got home. A woman answered almost immediately. Her voice was smooth and bright, the kind of customer service voice that sounds like a smile, even when the person speaking is bored out of their mind. "Hello? How can I help you?" she asked. "I want to participate in the game show," I said. "Isn't that what this number is for?" "Oh, yes, of course," she said, like I'd asked about a store return. "What is your name, sir?" "Marcus," I said. I could hear quick typing on her end. No background noise, no office chatter, no muffled TV, just the clicking of keys, neat and fast. "Yes, okay," she said. "We'll get back to you soon." And then the call ended. No confirmation number, no follow-up questions, no instructions, no address, just a cheerful goodbye and dead air. I stared at my phone for a while, feeling stupid. It was probably a scam. I'd been warned about stuff like that 100 times. I'd seen enough stories online to know better. But I was young, and I wanted to believe there was some weird shortcut out of my life. I went to bed on the mattress on the floor of my tiny apartment and passed out. The next day was the same as always. Wake up, work, come home. I was walking back from my shift in the cold, hands shoved deep in my pockets, thinking about bills and tuition and how far away everything felt. My phone buzzed. No caller ID. I ignored it. It rang again immediately. Same blocked number. Then again, like whoever it was had decided this was urgent. I answered with a sigh, irritated. "Hello?" I said, making it clear I wasn't in the mood. "Hello," the same smooth voice said, warm as syrup. "We're ready for you." "Okay. Where can we—" I started. I didn't finish. Something hit the back of my head, and a bag dropped over my face at the same time. The fabric smelled sweet, like cut hay left in the sun. I went down hard, my shoulders slamming pavement. Hands grabbed my arms, strong and practiced. I tried to shout, but a different hand clamped over my mouth. My vision went black. The next thing I knew, I was strapped into a chair. At first, I thought I was still unconscious. There was a blindfold over my eyes, tight enough that my lashes brushed the fabric. I could hear sounds around me. Movement, distant voices, something like music muffled by walls. My wrists ached like they'd been held too hard. My mouth tasted like cheap cloth. Then a voice boomed through speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Doors," it announced, excited and theatrical. "I'm your host, Anne." It was the same voice from the phone. My stomach dropped. "Our contestant this evening is your one and only, Marcus." The blindfold was ripped off so fast it stung. Show lights hit me like a punch. I blinked hard, eyes watering, trying to adjust. I heard cheering, loud, layered, way too perfect. The kind of cheering you hear on TV and don't think about until you're standing inside it and realize it doesn't sound like real people. It sounded timed. I looked around, dazed. I was on a stage. A real stage. Big glossy floor. Bright lights overhead. A crowd in front of me, faces blurred by glare. Some of them were standing. Some were waving. Some looked like cardboard cutouts until they moved in sync. Anne stood to my left in a sleek outfit that glittered into the lights. She smiled like she'd known me forever. "Now, lovely contestant," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder like we were friends, "choose a door." She turned me away from the audience and toward 3 identical doors set into a wall. They were plain, painted the same dull color, each with a number, door 1, door 2, door 3. "Each of these doors has something behind it," Anne announced, "but only one has $100,000. The crowd roared again, perfectly on cue. "Choose one to reveal," she said, gesturing grandly. My heart was beating so hard I felt it in my throat. I wanted to ask where I was. I wanted to demand to be let go. I wanted to run. But my body wasn't responding the way it should. It felt like there were rules I hadn't been told, and the entire room was waiting for me to follow them. So I did what someone does when they're scared and confused and trying not to look weak. I pointed. "The one on the left," I said. "This one." "Excellent choice," Anne said, and her smile sharpened. "What is behind door number 1? The door began to open. It didn't swing quickly like someone pulled it. It eased back slowly, smoothly, like it was on a motor, like it was controlled. The space behind it was lit, a bright rectangle of white light, and standing in that space was a mule, a real mule. Gray-brown fur, long ears, blank eyes. It blinked once at the lights like it didn't want to be there any more than I did. The crowd made disappointed noises, then laughed. "So close," Anne said, almost teasing. "Now you have a 50-50 shot of winning $100,000. The audience cheered again, louder this time, like the show wanted me to believe I was still lucky. "So," Anne continued, "which door do you choose to win?" I stared at the 2 remaining doors. My brain tried to approach it like a puzzle, like a normal game show. The middle door feels too obvious, I thought. But that's what they want you to think. So maybe the money is in the middle because people will talk themselves out of it. Or maybe it's actually simple, and it's on the right. I closed my eyes and pointed randomly, because it didn't feel like I was choosing anything anyway. "Door number 3, I said. The 3rd door opened, slow and careful, revealing a lit space behind it. And then she stepped forward. A girl. Not just pretty, but unnervingly beautiful. Like someone built her out of details that were designed to hook you. Her eyes were bright ocean blue, the kind of color people always say they could drown in, and for the first time in my life I understood what that meant. Her hair was so blonde it was almost white. Her skin was pale and smooth under the lights. She wore a black cocktail dress that shimmered when she moved, as if it had tiny stars sewn into it. She smiled, and something in me went quiet. "Unfortunately, you didn't win the money," Anne announced. The crowd booed. "But you won a date with Elaine." The audience exploded into screaming, clapping, whistles. It sounded like a track playing through the speakers, like an audio file labeled "Applause Big." Elaine's smile widened. Anne leaned close to me and spoke softly, still smiling for the cameras. "Congratulations," she said, and her voice was sweet in a way that felt sharp. The show ended in a blur. I didn't sign anything that I remember. I didn't get walked to a car with a handler the way contestants do on TV. 1 second I was on stage, blinded by lights, and the next I was outside in the cold air with Elaine beside me, as if this had all been normal. I should have run. I should have gone to the police. I should have told someone I'd been grabbed on the street and dragged into a studio. But I didn't, because Elaine took my hand, looked up at me with those impossible eyes, and said, "So, want to get coffee?" Like a normal first date. And I said yes. After that, it was a rush. Dates that felt like scenes from a movie. Long calls at night. Texts that made me grin at my phone at work. Sleepovers. Her perfume on my hoodie. Her laugh in my ear. Her face against my shoulder like she belonged there. We became official fast. Too fast, probably. But when someone makes you feel chosen, and you've spent most of your life feeling like background noise, you don't slow down to ask why. Elaine moved in with me. Or I moved in with her, depending on how you look at it. Because the apartment began to feel like it belonged to her more than it belonged to me. She cooked constantly. She loved the domestic stuff, making breakfasts that looked like they came from a restaurant, humming softly while she stirred batter or kneaded dough. She wore long pastel dresses around the house, like she was living in a different time period on purpose. I told myself she was just quirky. I told myself I was lucky. Then the weird things started. It began a few nights ago, small enough that I almost convinced myself it was nothing. I woke up at around 2 a.m. and got out of bed for a glass of water. Half awake, I glanced over at Elaine. She was sleeping on her side, hair spilling across the pillow. She was beautiful, like always, but something was off. Her ear, just slightly, looked like it was in the wrong place. Not dramatically, not like a horror movie. Just wrong enough that my brain snagged on it and wouldn't let go. Like someone had copied her face from memory and placed one detail slightly too high. I blinked, and it looked normal again. Must be the darkness, I told myself. Must be my eyes adjusting. I walked to the kitchen and opened the fridge. The light made me squint. I stood there staring at shelves like I'd forgotten why I came in, then decided I wanted a snack too. I reached toward the back for string cheese. That's when I saw a jar I didn't recognize. It was tucked behind condiments, half hidden. The glass caught the fridge light and glimmered. Inside were gray shavings, like someone had been sharpening something. Curiosity is dangerous at night, but I still pulled it out. The jar felt cold. The lid was screwed on tight. I opened it. The smell that hit me wasn't rot. It was sterile, like dry skin, like something that shouldn't have a smell at all. Inside were toenails, my toenails, mixed with short dark hairs, beard clippings, small pieces of me saved like ingredients. My stomach dropped. My hand shook. The jar slipped and shattered on the kitchen floor, glass and clippings scattered across the tiles. I stood there braced against the counter, breathing hard. My mouth went dry, and my brain tried to come up with an explanation that didn't involve the worst possibilities. I grabbed a glass from the cupboard, filled it with cold water, and drank it too fast, like water could wash the moment out of my body. Then, on autopilot, I grabbed a broom and swept everything up, hands moving while my mind screamed. I threw the mess into the trash, tied the bag, and shoved it under the sink, like hiding it would change what I'd seen. I went back to bed and lay there staring at the ceiling until morning. When I woke up, the smell of something cooking drifted upstairs, warm and comforting and normal. I walked into the kitchen and found Elaine at the stove, stirring batter rapidly, humming like she didn't have a jar of my body parts tucked in the fridge. "Good morning, Marcus," she said and kissed my cheek. My voice came out wrong. "Hi. She turned with a smile. "Yes? What is it?" "Last night," I said, forcing the words out, "I found a jar in the back of the fridge. I wanted to ask if you put it there and what it was." Her smile dropped. For a second, her face went blank. "What?" she said, like she didn't understand the words. "Well, there was—" "I'm sorry that I didn't tell you earlier," she said quickly, and the speed of it felt rehearsed. "But I wanted to make Victorian hair jewelry, and you didn't have enough hair, so I collected our toenail clippings to make resin jewels. I'm sorry." I stared at her. "Why was it in the fridge?" I asked. "Kills the bacteria," she said without hesitation. I tried to decide if I was overreacting. People have weird hobbies. People do crafts that make no sense. The internet is full of strangers doing things that would make your skin crawl if you saw them in real life. "I dropped it," I said quietly. I swept it up. "It's okay," she said, and she sounded calm again. I didn't know how it would react to the heat of the resin anyway. She toyed with my hair, fingers sliding through it like she was checking something. "I'll be done with pancakes in just a moment," she said, then turned back to the batter. I ate breakfast like a person pretending not to be afraid in their own kitchen. I went upstairs, put on the ugly yellow and red uniform, combed my hair, and left for work. I kissed Elaine goodbye because that's what you do when you're trying to keep your life from cracking open. At work, I told my coworker Andy about it. Andy was older, around 38. He had the tired calm of someone who'd seen enough nonsense to recognize danger when it showed up. He was building a burger while I talked, squirting ketchup onto the bun like he had all the time in the world. "Does your wife have any odd hobbies?" I asked. "Not really," he said. "She reads, listens to crime podcasts. That's about it." "Has your wife ever collected your hair or toenail clippings?" I asked, hating how my voice sounded. Andy paused mid-squeeze. The ketchup bottle hung above the bun. "Sorry, what?" he asked. "No, like, I heard you," he said slowly. "What sparked this?" So I told him about the jar, about Elaine's explanation, about the fridge. He stared at me for a long second, then finished the burger without speaking. When he wrapped it up, he finally said, "Dude, that's not normal." The words followed me for the rest of the shift. I messed up orders. I forgot fries. I stared too long at the warming trays, like I was trying to see something hidden behind the metal. My manager asked if I was okay, and I said yes, because college wasn't going to pay itself and my parents weren't going to help. When I got home, Elaine was cooking again. She always cooked. She insisted. Even when I told her I could handle it, even when I offered, she smiled and said she wanted to. That evening, she was boiling something on the stove, steam fogging the window. I hugged her from behind because I wanted to feel normal for a second. "What you making?" "Spaghetti," she said. "How wonderful," I replied, and I hated how fake my voice sounded. I changed upstairs. When I came down, she had already plated the food, set the table like we were in a commercial. "How was your day?" she asked, twirling pasta around her fork. "It was okay," I said, and my voice was numb. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Is something the matter?" "No, just having a hard time sleeping," I said. "Oh, no," she murmured, and she sounded almost delighted by the weakness in my voice. "How come?" "Just a lot on my mind," I said, fidgeting with spaghetti like I could wrap my thoughts around my fork and carry them away. "Is there anything I can do to remedy that?" she asked. "I think I'm going to bed early," I said, standing up too fast. "Okay then," she said, and her eyes pinned me as I washed my plate. As I walked upstairs, I glanced back and caught her profile for a split second. She looked wrong. Not in a way I can describe cleanly. Like a mask slipping. Like a face remembered incorrectly. Then I looked directly at her, and it was fine again. I told myself I was exhausted, that my brain was playing tricks, that fear makes you see patterns that aren't there. In the bathroom, I turned on the light and stared at my reflection. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and tried to ignore the feeling that something was watching me. It wasn't a normal someone might be in the house fear. It felt like being studied, like prey. I leaned closer to the mirror, checking myself the way anxious people do. My face looked thinner than usual. My body looked smaller. I'd always been fairly muscular. I ate like a guy who worked on his feet. I hadn't been to the gym in a week, sure, but that didn't explain how sharp my jaw looked, how my shirt hung a little looser. I opened my mouth to tell myself to stop being dramatic. That's when I saw her in the mirror. Elaine stood behind me, except she wasn't Elaine. Her eyes were sunken deep. Her blonde hair sat crooked like a wig shifted out of place. Her skin sagged, sliding down her face like it was melting. She looked like a body in slow decay. I whipped around. Elaine stood there in a nightgown, perfectly normal, tilting her head as if I'd entertained her. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said, forcing the words out carefully. "I think the lack of sleep is getting to me." "Well, you certainly don't look fine," she said, and brushed hair from my face. Her fingers felt cold for a second, then warm again. "How about you lie down, and I'll fetch you some lavender tea?" She guided me to bed like I was sick. I let her, because arguing felt dangerous. She left, and I heard her moving downstairs, quick steps, almost excited. She returned with tea, placed it on my bedside table, and climbed into bed beside me like nothing was wrong. "Good night, Marcus," she whispered, snuggling against my chest. I drank the tea. Within seconds, my body shut down. Not the slow slide into sleep, more like someone flipped a switch. That night, I dreamed something was chasing me. I ran and ran, lungs burning, and woke up in a cold sweat. The room was dark. Elaine wasn't beside me. A figure stood at the end of the bed. I tried to move and couldn't. Panic surged. My chest felt pinned. Sleep paralysis, I thought, trying to grab the most normal explanation I could. The figure climbed onto the bed. As it moved closer, it changed shape, human outline collapsing into something else. It didn't have eyes. It didn't have a nose. It didn't have anything except a mouth, too wide, full of jagged teeth, a grin that wasn't an expression so much as a weapon. Its tongue shot out like a long needle and punctured my body. I tried to scream. No sound came out. I couldn't breathe. The weight of it crushed my ribs. It drank. Greedy gulps like I was a cup. It's just a dream, I told myself. Just a dream. Just a dream. I squeezed my eyes shut with everything I had. When I opened them, it was gone. Elaine was in bed, curled up on her side with most of the blanket, sleeping peacefully. I lay there shaking until my eyes burned, and tears slid down my temples into my hair. In the morning, my throat felt like sandpaper. I stood up slowly, body heavy and wrong. In the bathroom mirror, I checked behind me before I looked at myself. No one. Then I stared at my body, and my stomach sank. I was thinner. My ribs were beginning to show. I went downstairs, still half in shock, and found Elaine already cooking, like she did every morning. Flour dusted her face. She wore a long pastel gown, soft pink with white ribbons, like she'd dressed up for a picnic instead of a kitchen. "How did you sleep?" she asked, sounding sweet. "Horrible," I admitted. She stopped kneading dough. Concern creased her forehead. "My poor boyfriend," she murmured, coming closer. I wrapped my arms around her waist, desperate for normal touch, and rested my forehead against her shoulder. "What was keeping you up so late?" she asked. "I had this nightmare," I said. "There was this creature, and—" "Slow down," she said, rubbing my back. "It was just a nightmare." "But it felt real," I insisted. "And you weren't in bed, and—" "I know," she interrupted gently. "If it happens again, wake me next time. Okay? Also, are you losing weight?" I pulled up my black tank top. "Yeah, I am." Her eyes widened. "Oh, my God." "What?" "Your ribs are sticking out," she said, and she sounded almost panicked, like she was worried her food source was spoiling. She rushed to the fridge, heated up pancakes from yesterday, stacked them high, drowned them in syrup, added fruit, powdered sugar. She pushed the plate in front of me at the counter. "Eat," she said. "Please." I ate because I was hungry in a way I'd never been hungry before. Not cravings, need. I cleaned the plate down to the last crumb and still felt hollow. The rest of the day was almost normal. Shopping, dinner out, a movie. Elaine laughed at the right times, held my hand, looked at me like I was everything. But night came, and with it, that heavy fear. "Elaine," I said quietly in bed, "I'm scared." "I'm right here," she whispered, resting her head in the crook of my neck. "If it happens again, close your eyes and count to 10. That helped me when I was little. I had sleep paralysis all the time. After you wake me up, okay?" "Okay," I said. "I love you." "I love you too," she replied, and kissed my skin. That night, I dreamed of the version of Elaine from the mirror. In the dream, she peeled her skin off like it was clothing, and underneath was that mouth-only creature, smiling at me. I jolted awake. Elaine stood facing the corner of the room, perfectly still. "Elaine?" I whispered. No answer. My eyes flicked to the bed beside me. Elaine was there, asleep. My stomach flipped. I looked back at the standing figure. It wore Elaine's shape like a costume, and the skin began to melt off it in slow drips, like candle wax sliding down a frame. "Elaine," I whispered again, and nudged the sleeping Elaine hard. She didn't wake. I turned her over. Maggots spilled out. Her eyes, her mouth, her hairline. Her skin was rotting, pale turned gray, covered in swollen patches. Pus, peeling flesh. The smell hit me a second later, sweet and sick. I gagged. I stumbled backward off the bed. The standing thing snapped its head toward me, and even before I saw its grin, I felt it. The room filled with that same pressure as the dream, the sense of being pinned. I ran. I bolted for the door, feet slamming each step down the stairs. Behind me, I heard it, panning, claws scratching on wood, the sound of something too hungry to be careful. This can't be happening, I kept thinking, like repeating it could force reality to obey. I burst outside into rain. Cold water slapped my face. My lungs burned. My calves screamed. I ran down the street like the night itself was chasing me. I just needed distance. I just needed people. Lights. A place where it couldn't pretend. I tripped. I hit the wet pavement hard. Breath knocked out of me. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for teeth, waiting to be opened like meat. Nothing happened. I opened my eyes. Elaine knelt beside me, hair damp from rain, face soft with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Why are you out in the street?" I crawled backward, flinching away. "Get away from me," I said, and my voice shook so badly I could barely form words. "Marcus, what's wrong?" she asked gently. "You're going to get a cold. Come on, let's—" "Stay away," I said louder. "Stay away." She froze. "What?" "You're not Elaine," I whispered, and the certainty of it was like ice in my chest. Her expression changed. Her warm smile dropped. Her eyes lost their bright color like someone turned down a screen. And then her mouth curved into that same grin I'd seen on the creature, too wide, too sure. "Don't worry, darling," it cooed in Anne's smooth customer service voice. "This will be quick." My stomach turned. I laughed, broken and sharp. "You're not real," I said, and the words tasted like relief. "You told me yourself." It was all too good to be true. The game show, the girl, the cooking, all of it. For the first time, the thing looked startled, like I'd hit it where it didn't have armor. I didn't waste the moment. I got up and ran. I cut through alleys, across streets, anywhere there were lights and cars and potential witnesses. My legs felt like they might snap. My chest burned. I didn't stop until I saw an open sign glowing like a lifesaver. A Waffle House. I stumbled inside, soaked, shaking, and spotted Andy in a booth, calmly eating like the world wasn't ending. He looked up at me, eyes widening. "What happened to you?" he asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." "It's my girlfriend," I panted. She's not, she's a creature. Or something, please." Andy slid out of the booth without hesitation. "Sit down," he said, voice steady. "I'll buy you a coffee. Tell me what happened." So I did. I told him everything. The flyer, the call, the bag over my head, the lights, the doors, the mule, Elaine, the jar in the fridge, the mirror, the weight loss, the nightmares, the thing's voice. Andy listened, the way people don't usually listen, all the way through, without laughing, without interrupting to fix it. When I finished, he stared down at his empty plate for a moment like he was thinking hard. Then he said, "You can stay at my place for a while, until you get back on your feet." I nodded because my throat had closed, because the coffee smelled like safety, because for the first time in days I felt like someone believed me enough to help. I haven't seen the entity since. I don't know what it was, or how it found me, or what it wanted long-term. I only know that it could wear a face, and it could cook a perfect breakfast, and it could make a lonely person feel loved until they stopped questioning the cost. And I know I'll never call a number on a flyer again, no matter what it promises is waiting behind the door. Story 3. I don't sleep well. I haven't for a long time, really not since the night my dad got divorced, killed my mom, and then killed himself. The police called it what it was, a family annihilation that didn't fully succeed only because I wasn't home. I was at a friend's house that night. If I'd been in my bed like usual, I wouldn't have made it out. There were interviews afterward, adults in uniforms asking questions in careful voices, trying to understand a tragedy like it could be filed and labeled. They told me my dad left a note on his body, a note asking God for forgiveness. I've tried not to picture it. I fail a lot. After that, my uncle, my dad's brother, took me in. On paper, it sounded like the kind of thing people call heartwarming, a relative stepping up, a child not being placed in the system, a home, stability, family. Only Uncle Tommy wasn't a safe person. He was a violent alcoholic with more issues than I can list without turning this into a medical report. Anger problems, control problems, a mean streak that seemed to turn on and off depending on how much he'd had to drink and whether he wanted an audience. And there was something else, too, something worse than the yelling and the slamming doors and the way he treated kindness like a weakness. As I got older, his attention on me shifted in a way that made my skin crawl. 6 years with him didn't destroy me outright, but it rewired me. I'm still undoing it. He was a narcissist down to his bones. He'd remind me constantly that I should be grateful for his sacrifice. He'd talk about how much he'd done for me, as if taking me in gave him ownership. He'd say things that were meant to sound like compliments, but landed like threats. "You're aging so nicely," he'd say. And then he'd run his fingers through my hair like I was something he'd purchased. That sentence alone explains most of my insomnia. Living with him taught me things people aren't supposed to know. I learned to read the house at night like a map. I can tell who is walking and where they are by the sound alone. Bare feet against old flooring. Socks sticking slightly when someone's been sweating. The drag of a heel. The pause at a doorway. The way a tall body shifts when it's trying to be quiet but isn't capable of quiet. And keys. Keys are the worst. The sound of keys in a lock makes my stomach drop every time. Not a lot of keys, not a huge ring, not just 1 or 2. 6 keys. The particular clink and jingle of 6 keys together, that sound got burned into me. It was the sound of Uncle Tommy coming home. The sound that meant I needed to be ready. So now I notice everything. I'm particular. I pick up on patterns. I store them without meaning to. That's why I know my cat is getting heavier. I'm not saying she's getting fatter. She isn't. She looks the same. That's the part that doesn't make sense. She's the same size, the same shape, the same sleek black coat. But when she climbs onto me, the weight is different. It's subtle at first, easy to dismiss as me being tired or anxious or too aware of my own body. But it's changing, and I know what normal feels like. I got away from Uncle Tommy the moment I turned 18. I left fast. I didn't negotiate, didn't argue, didn't talk it out. I just escaped. I found work at a warehouse and moved in with a coworker named Derek. He's fine. Not my type of person, not someone I'd choose as a close friend, but he's not cruel. He works the same line as me a couple times a week. And when I explained my situation, some of it, not all, he let me rent a room in his apartment, $100 a month. In this economy, it's practically charity. There's also one problem. His landlord can't know I'm there, and the landlord definitely can't know there's a cat. 2 violations for the price of 1. But I didn't care. I needed out, and Derek's place was out. I didn't even have a cat at the time. That happened later, at work, in a way that still makes me feel sick when I think about it. It was another normal shift at the warehouse. I know the sounds there the way I know the sounds of a house at night. The steady hum of the machines. The rollers pushing boxes forward. The scanner chirps and beeps as packages are checked and routed. You can tune it all out after a while. It becomes a mechanical kind of music. That day, mixed into the usual noise, I heard something else. A thin, high-pitched whining. It wasn't constant, but it came often enough that my brain flagged it as a problem. I assumed a roller was loose or a bolt was coming undone. Something was failing somewhere. Earlier in the shift, a return package got flagged for an error. Something about the weight not matching what it was supposed to be. That happened sometimes. I tossed it into a bin with other rejects, planning to deal with it later. When I finally rolled the bin over to check the errors, I noticed one box looked wrong. It had tiny holes in the cardboard, several of them, like someone had poked it with a pen from the inside. The whining came again. It was coming from that box. I didn't think. I just tore it open. The second I saw what was inside, I felt bile climb into my throat. My stomach turned like it was trying to protect me by emptying itself. A kitten. Tiny. Black. So small she fit easily in my hands. She couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. She was weak and trembling, and her little cries were thin, like she didn't have enough strength left to be loud. I looked around in shock, like I expected a camera to catch my reaction and tell me I was on some sick prank show. Who does that? Who ships a living animal as a return like it's a broken appliance? I held her against my chest instinctively, like that would warm her up. She felt too light, like a thing that shouldn't still be alive. I called for help. My supervisor, Mike, waddled over like he always does, annoyed before he even knows why. "Why are you behind on those?" he started, and then saw the kitten in my arms and stopped. His face pinched up with confusion, as if he couldn't process it quickly enough. "What the hell?" he muttered. "Why do you have that?" "Someone shipped her as a return," I said. My voice sounded strange to me, too sharp. "Some sick asshole sent her in a box." For once, Mike didn't have a smug response ready. He stared at her, then at me. "What do you think we should do with it?" "That's why I called you," I snapped. "I don't know what to do." I remember the kitten's tiny body shaking with each weak sound. I remember thinking, whatever happens, she can't stay here. She'll die in this building. Mike finally shrugged and said, "Well, it's just a cat. Toss it outside or something." Something hot and violent flashed through me. Not just anger, something deeper. Rage mixed with disgust. The kind of emotion that makes you understand how people do terrible things when they stop caring about consequences. I didn't scream at him. I didn't throw anything. I did the most responsible thing I could do in that moment. I walked away before I did something that would ruin my life. Mike shouted after me, but I kept going. I took the kitten and left work. I didn't care if I got fired. I wasn't going to let her die because a manager couldn't be bothered to act like a human being. There was a vet not far from the warehouse. When I explained what happened, that I found a kitten stuffed into a return box, the staff looked horrified. They took her immediately, did checkups, gave her fluids, and kept her overnight. They didn't even charge me. Before I left, one of them asked, almost casually, "So what are you going to name her?" I didn't even have to think. The name arrived fully formed in my head, like it had been waiting. Boxes, I said, and that's how I ended up with her. Boxes grew fast. She became my shadow, my comfort animal, my warm weight at night. She'd crawl onto my chest, right under my chin, and purr like she was trying to anchor herself to me. Sometimes she even snored, this ridiculous little sound like an asthmatic truck driver. It made me laugh the first time I heard it, and I hadn't laughed easily in a long time. Derek didn't mind having her around as long as the landlord never found out. He also didn't mind me being there, as long as I kept my head down. It wasn't perfect, but it was safer than Uncle Tommy. And still, sleep didn't come easy. It never does for me. The smallest noise can drag me awake. That part of me doesn't shut off. It's like my body learned that night is when bad things happen, and it refuses to unlearn it. The one thing that helped was boxes. When she was on my chest, purring, I found it easier to drift off. And once I did fall asleep, her warm weight sometimes made it harder for me to jolt awake at every sound. 2 weeks ago, that started to change. It began like any other night. I locked my door, turned off the lights, got under the covers, waited for boxes to show up. She did, as usual, hopping onto the bed and curling on my chest. Derek isn't a creep. Not really. He tried once to sleep with me when he was drunk, but it didn't happen. And he's never tried again. He's more of a clueless dude bro than anything else. So I wasn't worried about him sneaking around. That night, though, I couldn't settle. I kept drifting and then snapping back awake, like my body refused to commit to sleep. Then I heard footsteps, soft, muffled, on carpet. I know Derek's walk. I've memorized it without trying. He steps, then shuffles. Sometimes he stops and retraces his steps like he forgot what he was doing. It's inconsistent, almost random. These footsteps weren't like that. They came in pairs, a gentle thud-thud, thud-thud, steady and even. A rhythm that triggered something in me before I even understood why. And then I knew. It was the way my uncle walked. My heart dropped so hard it felt like it hit the floor. My hand moved automatically under my pillow for the switchblade I keep hidden there. I hate that I own one. I hate that I feel like I need one. But I do. Boxes protested, meowing as my arm shifted under her. But within seconds, she tried to resettle like nothing was wrong. "Not now," I whispered harshly. Not because I was angry at her, but because fear makes me sharp. The footsteps moved back and forth outside my door. Back and forth. Like someone waiting. Like someone pacing. Like someone wanting to come in but not doing it. That was another detail that made my skin go cold. My uncle used to do that when I started locking my door at night. He'd pace outside it for a while, and every so often, there'd be a soft knock. Not a polite knock. More like testing the door, testing me. Sometimes after the knock, I'd hear something scrape along the door, like a key or a coin, or something hard dragged slowly over the surface. A sound meant to remind you it was there. That night, I heard a soft knock, then a drag. I lay there barely breathing, listening until my ears felt raw from it. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under. Box's snoring did what it always does. It made my brain loosen its grip. I passed out from sheer fatigue. In the morning, I tried to explain it away. Maybe Derek had a friend over. Maybe someone sleepwalked. Maybe I was half dreaming. None of my explanations were good, but they were better than the alternative. That alternative was, Uncle Tommy found me. When I asked Derek casually if someone had been over, he just said, "I wish," and laughed like it was a joke. The next day, nothing happened. That made it easier to convince myself I'd imagined it. Then, last week, I woke up in the middle of the night to a loud bang, not like a gunshot, more like someone hitting the floor hard, head first, then the rest of their body following. The sound was so sudden it slammed me awake like a hand. Boxes only reacted because I did. She jumped off my chest, stared for a second, then wandered off to find another comfortable spot. Meanwhile, my heart hammered so violently I thought it might actually rupture. "Glad nothing bothers you," I muttered into the dark. I sleep with the nightlights. I didn't used to. But when I was younger, I woke up more than once to find my uncle sitting in the corner of my room in total darkness. He didn't seem to realize I could see him. He sat there breathing in a wet, erratic way like he was struggling. I told him I was afraid of the dark to justify the nightlight later. The truth was I was afraid of him watching me while I slept. After I started using it, he stopped coming in. Or at least, I stopped catching him. So the nightlight stayed. My tiny beacon. After the first bang, I stared at my door, telling myself it was nothing. Maybe Derek dropped something. Maybe he fell. Maybe something shifted in the apartment. When I finally closed my eyes again, I heard it. Thud, thud. 2 heavy impacts close together, louder than before. "Derek?" I called. No answer. Boxes slept like she hadn't heard a thing. I reached for her, stroking her fur to calm myself. The nightlight's dim glow filled part of the room with a weak warmth, and I clung to it like it meant safety. Thud, thud. This time it sounded right behind me. My eyes flicked to the door. The door was ajar. I couldn't remember leaving it that way. I lock it every night. I always lock it. It's not a habit. It's survival. Panic rose so fast I almost sat up and screamed. But something stopped me. A stupid thought, but one I couldn't shake. If I look directly at whatever is doing this, I'll make it real. Like noticing it is permission. The air felt stale, humid, wrong like a hot day trapped inside a room. I pulled the covers over my head and prayed to a God I don't even believe in. I felt the bed indent as boxes returned and walked along my body, stepping carefully. But the pressure was wrong. It felt like a cat, but heavier. Too heavy. I held my breath, wondering if whatever it was could hear my teeth chattering. A soft wheezing started beside my head, close enough that I could feel the breath pattern of it. I stayed under the covers until morning. When daylight came, my door was shut and locked, just like it always is, like nothing happened at all. I didn't know how to talk to Derek about it. Every version of the conversation made me sound either paranoid or accusing him of something gross. So instead, I asked him casual questions about his night. He said he was gaming and exercising. When I asked what kind of exercise, he got awkward and admitted it was private. I stopped asking. I didn't want details. He didn't hear any loud thuds. He didn't have anyone over. Nothing useful. For a few nights after that, things were quiet. I started to relax, started to tell myself it was just nightmares, stress, lack of sleep, my brain filling in gaps with old fear. Then 2 nights ago, I woke up to voices. 2 people talking, low and intense. At first, I thought Derek had brought someone home, but it didn't sound like flirting. It sounded like pleading, like an argument. I glanced toward the nightlight and then toward my bed. Boxes wasn't on my chest. She wasn't curled beside me either. She was at the sliding closet door, pawing at it over and over like she wanted inside. The closet is where her food is stored. Boxes, I whispered. Come back here. She ignored me. She kept pawing at the closet door so hard it rattled. You hungry? I asked, confused. What's wrong? Annoyed and half asleep, I got out of bed to close the closet door, which was open a little. The second I stepped close, my blood turned to ice. I could hear my father's voice coming from inside the closet. Not a memory. Not my imagination replaying a line. His actual voice, tone, rhythm, the exact way he sounded. Boxes stopped pawing and stared up at me like she was waiting. I pressed my ear to the closet door, barely breathing. Now I could hear 2 voices clearly. My mother and my father. They were arguing. You can't be here, my mother said. Honey, please, my father said. We can work this out. You got caught, Stephen, she said. You played with my heart and our family. And you lost. I hope it was worth it. Don't make me call the police. Silence, thick and tense. Then my father said, I love you. More silence. Then rustling, and a click I recognized even though I wish I didn't. My mother's voice sharpened with fear. Stephen, are you serious? Put the gun down. You can... My father's voice cut in, loud and demanding. Where's Cassandra? She's not here. Where's Cassandra? Fuck you. The gunshot went off so loud I stumbled back like the sound physically hit me. My hand flew to my mouth. Tears flooded my eyes before I even understood why. Then a second shot, slightly duller like it came after a body fell. I stood there shaking, and the realization slid into place like a blade. I was hearing their last moments, the last interaction before he killed her, and then himself. I collapsed onto the floor and cried like I was 5 again, like I'd never left that night behind. Boxes walked over and made a small trilling sound, then climbed onto my chest the way she always does. Her purring vibrated in my throat. Only this time it didn't comfort me. She felt heavier. The weight made breathing hard. It was like someone set a warm brick on me. I choked out, Thanks, Boxes, because I didn't know what else to say. When morning came, I tried to dismiss it as a nightmare. But it didn't feel like one. It felt too clear, too detailed, too real. And also, my mother didn't sound like how I remember her. She wasn't confrontational. She wasn't the type to swear and yell. Part of me wondered if my memory of her was wrong, or if what I heard wasn't truly her at all. Just a scene built from scraps. That morning, Derek confronted me before I could bring anything up. He stood in the kitchen with a serious look that didn't fit his usual vibe. Yo, Caddy, he said, I need to talk to you. I already hated the nickname, but I just said, yeah? He looked uncomfortable. I know we ain't supposed to have a cat in here, but I thought you said she'd stay in your room. She, I corrected, and she does. My door's always closed. I'm not mad, he said quickly. I'm just confused. Last night she was in my room during my special exercise time, and she wouldn't stop staring at me. My stomach twisted. When? Late, he said. I don't know exactly. I forced myself to nod, even though my mind was racing. If Boxes was in his room, then maybe my closet voices were a dream. Maybe. I didn't like the relief that thought gave me because it also made me feel unstable. Sorry, I said. It won't happen again. Derek rubbed his forehead like he was trying to remember something important. They might kick us out if they find her wandering, he said. It won't happen again, I repeated. Then, careful, like I didn't want to hear the answer, I asked. Did you hear anything strange last night? He shook his head, then asked me the same question back. His eyes narrowed, concerned. I considered telling him about the closet, about my parents' voices and the gunshot. I didn't. Derek isn't a monster. But he isn't my therapist either. And I didn't want to see that look in his eyes. The look that says, she's losing it. So I lied. No, I said. Nothing to worry about. He relaxed a little. Then I said, almost joking, and what are you feeding her? Little rascal weighs a ton. I laughed because it was easier than answering honestly. She's not that heavy. He smiled like he didn't believe me. Yeah, whatever you say. Need a lift today? No, I said, grabbing my things. Thanks, though. He called me another nickname on the way out. I didn't even respond. At work that day, Mike kept pacing near my station again. I could hear his keys before I saw him. 3 keys, not 6. 3 keys don't set off my panic the same way. Still, he was hovering like he wanted to talk. I hated it. Between the cameras, the constant pressure to work faster, and Mike's habit of showing up just to remind you he has power, the whole place felt like a cage. After the 6th time he paced by, I finally snapped. Mike, I said, is something wrong? He didn't make eye contact. He looked like he was chewing the inside of his mouth. Then he asked, how's that little rat you found in the box? My exhaustion turned his words into fuel. Surprised you cared, I said. Or remembered. He flashed a smug smile, like always, but it didn't look stable today. It looked forced. Oh, yeah, he said. I cared about that little black, whatever it was. A kitten, I corrected. It was a kitten. Right, he said quickly. Well, I forgot to tell you. This was in the return box. Been meaning to give it to you. He handed me a folded sheet of lined paper and walked away fast. Like he didn't want to be there when I read it. I stared at the paper for a long time. Why would he keep a note from that box? Why would someone ship a kitten and also include a note? My mind tried to turn it into something petty, something I could handle, like Mike playing a prank or trying to scare me. I didn't open it at work. I couldn't. I slipped it into my bag and took it home. That night, I even ate dinner with Derek, which is not something I normally do. He brought home chipotle and talked about cilantro, like he'd just discovered a new element on the periodic table. I ate a Lunchables pizza because I didn't have energy for anything else. At one point, he asked if I wrote that letter by the door, and I told him no, that Mike gave me a note from the box. Derek looked unsettled in a way I didn't expect. You read it yet? He asked. I laughed nervously and said it was probably just a prank, nothing serious. He seemed relieved by that, like I'd just reassured him about something I didn't understand. Later, in my room, Boxes greeted me like she always does. When I pet her, I noticed something brown in her fur, like dirt or dust. It didn't make sense. She stays in my room all day. Unless Derek was letting her out while I worked, which I couldn't picture him doing without mentioning it. My curiosity about the note faded for a while. I watched a movie on my phone. Boxes stayed close. I gave her wet food because she'd been such good company. I felt that familiar gratitude again, the feeling that we found each other and that maybe we were keeping each other alive. Then, in the middle of the night, Boxes started wheezing loudly right next to my head, much louder than normal. I opened my eyes. There was no Boxes, and my nightlight was off. My throat tightened so hard it felt like I'd swallowed something sharp. I reached out in the dark, feeling for warm fur, for any sign of her, but my hands found nothing but sheets. Then I saw it. A figure stood at the end of my bed. It was thin, almost starved-looking. Its chest rose in an exaggerated way, as if it had to work too hard for each breath. Then it exhaled, and the wheezing filled the room again. Its head was ivory white. Not pale like skin, white like bone. Its eyes were amber, glowing just enough to make the darkness around them look deeper. I couldn't move. My body locked up the way it does when fear gets so big it becomes physical. The wheezing grew louder with each breath. Under it, I heard a wet gurgle, like something deep in its throat was clogged. Then it spoke. "You're aging so nicely." The words came out wrong, like an animal forcing itself to imitate human speech. But the cadence, the tone, was unmistakable. It sounded like my uncle. Not exactly. Like the voice had been chopped up and put back together incorrectly. Like something wore his voice the way a person wears a coat that doesn't fit. I made a small movement like I was going to sit up. The thing growled. I froze. When I lay back down, the wheezing softened, as if it approved of me staying still. Then I felt the bed indent in a pattern I recognized. Small presses, one after another, like paws. Something moved up the bed slowly until it reached me. It climbed onto my body and settled on my upper chest, right below my neck, the exact place Boxes always chooses. But the weight was crushing. It was too heavy. Heavy enough that my breathing became work, not automatic. Heavy enough that panic surged because my body couldn't get a full breath. It purred, except it wasn't a purr. It was a wet gurgle, thick with phlegm, vibrating through me like a warning. I pulled the covers up to my eyes, shaking. I peeked out just enough to see amber eyes staring directly into mine. It didn't blink. It didn't look away. It just held my gaze like it was waiting for something from me. Whatever was on my chest looked like Boxes, but it wasn't my cat. I knew it in the same way you know when someone is behind you without turning around. My body understood it before my mind could argue. I covered my face again and tried to force the situation into the category of nightmare. I tried to tell myself my brain was broken, that trauma makes dreams vivid, that lack of sleep makes you hallucinate, that I was having night terrors. But deep down, I didn't believe my own excuses. I lay there helpless while the gurgling gradually softened, slowly smoothing into the familiar purr I knew. At some point, I must have blacked out again because the next thing I remember is morning light filtering through the sheets. I got out of bed like I was trying not to scare anything, like the room was a wild animal, and I needed to move carefully. Boxes was there, alive, stretching the way cats do. She looked normal. She acted normal. I fed her meow mix, even poured a little extra without thinking, like I was trying to apologize to her for what I'd been afraid of. My hands shook when I spoke. "Hey, Boxes." I scanned the room for any sign of that thing, any trace of it. Nothing. Then my eyes landed on the plastic tote I use as the nightstand. The note was sitting there. I'd forgotten about it completely. My mouth went dry. Boxes crunched happily at her food, unbothered. I picked up the note as if it might burn me and left the room, shutting my door behind me. I went into the kitchen so I'd have more space, more light, more air. I unfolded the paper slowly. The handwriting was neat, careful. The kind of writing someone does when they're trying to make themselves understood, when they're terrified and forcing their hand to stay steady. The note was short, but it was enough. It said the kitten had been born in a litter of 6, and something was wrong with it. The writer said they loved animals and never imagined doing what they did, but they didn't see another option. They wrote that the kitten kept getting heavier and heavier even though he stayed normal in size. Then they wrote the part that made my vision blur. They said they woke up in the night and it tore their husband's throat open. It was eating him. They couldn't pull it off his body. They wrote that they'd try to kill it or get rid of it, but it always came back as a newborn, no matter how many times they tried. They ended by saying they didn't know what else to do, and then, "I am so sorry." I read it twice, 3 times. Like reading it again would change the words. Like the ink would rearrange itself into something less impossible. My fingers went numb around the paper. In the other room, Boxes made a small sound, the casual noise of a cat finishing breakfast. I didn't move for a long time. I just stood there in Derek's kitchen, holding that note, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under my life. Because now I couldn't pretend I was imagining it. Now I had proof that someone else noticed the weight too. And if the note was real, if even half of it was real, then the question wasn't whether I was losing my mind. The question was what, exactly, I brought home from that box. Story 4. My mom has always been my idol, the biggest role model in my life. My dad died shortly after I was born, and she raised me alone. Not just raised me, she held everything up. She kept a demanding career as a doctor, kept our home running, kept me fed, clothed on schedule, and safe. My grandmother helped when she could, but the truth was simple. My mom was the foundation. If something went wrong, she fixed it. If something broke, she handled it. If I got scared, she somehow knew before I even said anything. As I got older, I started to notice I wasn't the only person who depended on her. I was 6 or 7 the first time I really noticed the women. They came at odd times, sometimes right after dinner, sometimes early in the morning on weekends, sometimes in the afternoon when I was homesick from school. They were always women, but otherwise there was no pattern. White, black, Asian, Hispanic. Early 20s, late 40s, some older. Some looked like they had money. Some looked like they were barely keeping their lives together. Some arrived in nice coats with clean hair and steady voices. Others showed up with trembling hands and red eyes, like they'd been crying in the car. Whenever one of them arrived, my mom would guide them down the hall and then send me to my room. I never argued. She always made it easy. "Go play," she'd say. And she'd give me a snack, apple slices, crackers, a popsicle if it was summer. She'd put on a show I liked or remind me my game time was fine as long as homework gets done. Then she'd close my bedroom door and leave me to it. I'd sit on my bed with a controller in my hands, listening to the house settle into quiet. Whatever my mom did with these visitors never took long, 15 minutes maybe, sometimes less. Then she'd knock on my door and poke her head in, gray eyes bright, smiling like nothing unusual had happened. "All set," she'd say. "Our guest is gone." And that would be it. My mom made good money at the hospital. She was respected in town. People talked about her like she was a local legend. But we lived in a normal 2-story house with 3 bedrooms. Not a mansion. Not a doctor's dream home. Just a house that felt clean and calm, with family pictures on the wall and my dad's old books, still on a shelf like he might come back and pick them up. There was one room in the house that wasn't normal, though. The spare bedroom right next to my mom's room was kept locked at all times. My mom called it her medical chamber. She told me there were instruments in there that could hurt me, and equipment that was expensive and easy to break. When I was little, that explanation satisfied me. It made sense. Doctors had doctor stuff. I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to disappoint her. So I never tried to go inside. I wasn't a rebellious kid. I was a kid who wanted his mom to be proud. But when I got older, questions started to form in the back of my mind, slow and stubborn. By the time I was 15, I couldn't ignore one detail anymore. As far as I knew, my mom was an obstetrician, one of the best in town. People spoke about her the way they spoke about the fire department or the hospital itself, like she was part of what kept the town alive. And yet, none of the women who visited our house looked pregnant, not one. They came with tense shoulders and nervous eyes. They came with that particular kind of desperation you can feel even if you don't understand it yet. But they didn't come with rounded bellies. They didn't come with baby bags. They didn't come with husbands hovering nearby. They came alone, and they left alone. And my mom always looked satisfied afterward in a way that didn't match a normal appointment. I tried to tell myself it was private care. Maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe they didn't want anyone to know. Maybe my mom was helping them with something not related to pregnancy at all. Still, the question stuck. Why here? Why the locked room? Why send me away every time? I might have kept wondering for years if not for the day the woman showed up while my mom was at work. It was a weekday morning. I was on the couch eating scrambled eggs from a paper plate, half paying attention to a show. The house felt quiet and empty in that way it did when my mom wasn't home. Then there was a knock at the front door. I ignored it at first. My mom had drilled rules into me. Don't open the door if she isn't home. Don't tell anyone you're alone. Don't even answer the door unless it's someone you recognize and she's expecting them. The knocking didn't stop. It turned into banging, loud enough that it made the picture frames on the wall tremble slightly. Then a voice called out, sharp and urgent. Annoyed more than scared because I was 15 and convinced I was tougher than I was, I got up and stomped to the door. I yanked it open. A woman stood on a porch, sweat running down her round, pale face. Dark hair stuck to her temples. She wore a white dress that was dirty at the hem, like she'd been walking through mud. She was visibly pregnant, belly stretched tight beneath the fabric. But it wasn't the belly that made my stomach tighten. It was her eyes. They were wide, frantic, full of unmistakable fear. Not the fear of someone startled, but the fear of someone being hunted by a thought they couldn't outrun. "Abel," she whispered. My throat went tight. Nobody said my name like that. Not like it was a secret they weren't supposed to know. "Abel," she said again, and her breathing hitched like she was close to hyperventilating. "Is your mother here?" I should have slammed the door right then. I should have lied. I should have done anything except stand there. But the woman clearly knew my mom. She had to. She looked like she'd been here before, even if I couldn't remember her. "No," I said cautiously. "She's at work. She'll be back in a few hours. I can tell her to call you." "No." Her voice cracked into anger so quickly it startled me. "I need her now. Right now, God damn it!" I took a step back instinctively, like her desperation had weight. "Ma'am," I started. "I'm sorry, but you can't—" "Listen to me," she snapped, leaning forward. "You call her. You call her now. Or I'll call the cops and tell them about what she's got back there." Her expression changed as she said it. Her eyes looked almost pleased, like she knew she'd just found the lever that would move me. My mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" I asked, but my voice sounded small. "You heard me," she hissed. "Call her." I hated that I obeyed. I hated that my first thought wasn't to protect myself, but to protect my mom. But at 15, my mom was still my whole world. The idea of her being in trouble, of police in our house, of strangers judging her, felt like the floor dropping away. So I called. My mom answered on the second ring, voice calm and professional. "Abel," she said, "everything okay?" There were so many ways I could have explained it, so many ways I could have begged her to come home without sounding ridiculous. But I just said the truth in the simplest way. "There's a woman here," I said. "She's pregnant. She's demanding to see you, and she threatened to call the cops about something you have in the back." The pause on the other end was short. "Put her on the phone," my mom said. I held the phone out. The woman snatched it like it burned. I couldn't hear the full conversation. The woman's voice rose, then cracked, then dropped into something pleading. My mom's voice stayed low even. Then the woman thrust the phone back at me, shaking. My mom's voice came through again. "Go to your room," she said softly. "I'll be home soon." The call ended. 20 minutes later, my mom's car pulled into the driveway. The woman had been kneeling on the porch, panting, hands clutching her belly, as if she could hold it in place. When she heard the tires on gravel, she sprang up like she'd been shocked. My mom stepped out of the car, shutting the door with controlled care. Her face was blank. No surprise, no anger, no fear, just calm. The woman stumbled toward her, voice spilling out too fast. "I've changed my mind," she cried. "I can't do this. I can't. I'm not fit to be a mother. You take this thing out of me. Take it out now, you bitch." My mom stared at her without blinking. "All right," she said. "Come with me." She walked into the house, and the woman followed, clutching her belly and sobbing. My mom glanced at me once as she passed. I knew what it meant. "Go to your room," Close the door. Don't ask questions. I went, but this time I didn't feel like a kid being sent away. I felt like a witness being dismissed. I closed my bedroom door, then immediately pressed my ear to it. I heard footsteps moving down the hall. I heard the click of the medical chamber door opening, then the heavy sound of it shutting. Silence. A few seconds passed. Then a scream tore through the house, so sharp and violent, it made my heart seize. A loud thud followed, like a body hitting the floor. I stumbled back into my room and sat on my bed with my hands shaking, forcing myself to pick up my controller and stare at the screen like that could make reality behave. It didn't even take 15 minutes this time. My door opened slightly. My mom's face appeared in a gap. There was blood on her cheek, smeared like she'd wiped her face without noticing. Her eyes were bright, not panicked. "I've got to get back to work, dear," she said in the same gentle voice she used when she reminded me to brush my teeth. "I'll make tacos tonight." Then she was gone. I heard her footsteps, heard the front door, heard her car reverse out of the driveway. The house fell quiet again. I sat there for a full minute, frozen. Then something in me snapped into motion. Not bravery exactly, but a kind of sick responsibility. That woman hadn't left. I knew she hadn't. I couldn't just sit in my room and pretend I didn't hear a scream. I couldn't let my mom's calm tone erase what my ears had heard. Whatever happened in that locked room, it had been violent. I stood up, breathing hard, and went down the hall toward my mom's room. My hands were sweating. My heart felt too big for my chest. I searched for the key the way you search when you're desperate, ripping drawers open, digging through jewelry boxes, checking behind picture frames, running my fingers along closet shelves. I checked into the bed and found dust bunnies and an old shoe, but no key. I went to the medical chamber door and grabbed the knob. Locked. Solid. For a moment I stood there, staring at it, feeling the weight of my mother's trust. Then I thought of the scream and the thud and the woman's eyes on the porch. I stepped back and slammed my shoulder into the door. Pain shot through me. The door didn't move. I did it again. And again. The frame groaned. My shoulder burned. On the fourth hit, something gave. The hinges squealed, and the door swung inward with a heavy crack. I stumbled forward, wheezing, and dropped to my knees. A smell rolled out of the dark room, thick and foul. Not just blood. Not just decay. It was something deeper, like wet meat left too long, mixed with a sweetness that made my stomach twist. Every part of me screamed that I didn't belong in there, but I'd already opened it. I forced myself to stand and stepped inside. The light from the hall barely reached the corners. The room was larger than I expected, cluttered with equipment and shelves. My eyes adjusted slowly. The first thing I saw was the woman on the floor. She lay on her side, blood pooled beneath her head. She was completely still. Her mouth was open slightly, as if she'd tried to speak and failed. I stepped toward her, horror rising like bile. Then I noticed her belly. It wasn't moving like a normal pregnant belly moves, with gentle shifts. It pulsed. It pushed outward in rhythmic waves, like something inside was pressing against the skin, trying to escape through her. I backed away, shaking. And that's when I felt it. A pull. Not a physical tug, but something inside my mind being drawn forward. Like when you lean too close to a ledge and your body feels the drop before your eyes do. It pulled me toward the center of the room. I turned my head, and my flashlight brain finally understood what my eyes were seeing. There was something else in there with me. A mass, pink and red and wet, towering about 7 feet high and at least 5 feet across. It looked like flesh without a body, a swollen growth given shape. Thick tendrils writhed from it, ropes of diseased tissue slick with fluid, slapping softly against the floor and each other. Across its surface were slits that opened and closed over and over, like the thing was breathing through wounds. Near the top, embedded in the center, was a single eye, yellow, clouded, full of pus. It stared at me, and it didn't blink. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My body locked up in the way prey locks up when it realizes it's already been spotted. The eye held me, and I swear the only word for what I felt from it was admiration. Like it knew me. Like it recognized something in me and liked it. Then the eye shifted, slow and deliberate, toward the dead woman on the floor. The mass trembled. Fluid seeped out of its slits like sweat. One tendril shot forward so fast it blurred. It grabbed the woman by the ankle and yanked her across the floor as if she weighed nothing. I watched. I didn't want to. I tried to look away, but my gaze stayed stuck, glued by shock and that same pulling force in my chest. I'm not going to describe what it did to her. Not fully. There are images that don't improve by being shared. There are things the brain records like scars, and even writing them down feels like reopening the wound. All I'll say is that it used her like an object, and the sound the room made while it did, it wasn't the sound of a person being treated like a person. When it was finished, the tendrils deposited something into her, something placed with purpose. Her belly stopped pulsing immediately. The room went quiet except for the wet breathing of the thing. Then the eye turned back to me, and I realized why the pull felt familiar. It felt like home. It felt like an answer. Understanding landed in my mind all at once, so clean it made me dizzy. The women I'd seen over the years, all those visits, all that secrecy. This wasn't about routine medical care. It wasn't about normal obstetrics. It was about the one thing desperate people will do anything for. A miracle. A child. Women who couldn't get pregnant, or couldn't stay pregnant, or whose bodies had failed them for reasons they didn't deserve. Women who had been told no by nature, and no by science, and no by money, and no by time. Women who came to my mother because my mother could say yes. My mother wasn't just skilled. My mother had something in that room. Something that could put a life where life wouldn't otherwise exist. My knees shook, my throat tightened. And beneath the fear, beneath the nausea and the disbelief, something else rose. A strange, aching tenderness. Because I'd grown up without a father. I'd grown up with only stories and photos. With my mom's quiet sadness hidden behind competence. I'd grown up believing my dad was simply gone. But standing in that room, staring into that single infected eye, I felt a recognition that didn't come from logic. I stepped forward. The tendrils shifted, not threateningly, almost welcoming. Warmth radiated off the mass, humid and alive. The smell was unbearable, and yet my body kept moving, like my limbs had been waiting for permission. I opened my arms and wrapped them around it. The surface was hot and slick. Slime ran down my face and into my mouth. bitter and salty and wrong. I gagged but didn't let go. I pressed my cheek against it like it could hold me up, and I whispered the word that had been forming in my mind since the moment the pull started. Dad. I don't know how long I stood there. I don't know what that makes my mother. I don't know what that makes me. I only know that for the first time in my life, I understood why she never let me in that room. And I understood why those women kept coming back. Story 5. I live in the most perfect place in the world, and that's why I'm terrified. I'm writing this from my bathroom floor with the lights off. My phone brightness is turned all the way down. If you're reading this, please don't brush it off. I'm not crazy. I wish I were. If I were losing my mind, then the world would still have rules. There would be an explanation that fits inside a human skull. But what's happening here doesn't fit. I moved to Silver Creek 6 months ago because I needed peace. I wanted that small-town quiet that feels like a hand on your shoulder. I wanted space. I wanted to stop waking up with my jaw clenched and my thoughts already racing. Silver Creek looked like an answer. Everything here is spotless in a way that almost feels polite. The sidewalks don't have cracks. The lawns look like someone combed them. The trees are trimmed so evenly you'd think there was a measuring tape involved. Even the street signs look new, like they're replaced the second they fade. At first, I honestly thought I'd gotten lucky. Then the peace started feeling thin. Not fragile. Fake. Like the quiet was being maintained, not happening naturally. The first sign wasn't a horror movie moment. It was just wrong. One morning around 7:30, I was heading out to work. My neighbor, Mr. Miller, was in his front garden. He's in his 50s, always wearing a puffy vest no matter the weather, always smiling like he's hosting a TV show about friendly neighborhoods. He was using a manual lawn edger, except his grass was already perfect. I mean perfect. Not pretty good, not well kept. Perfect like it didn't grow, like it had been manufactured. And he wasn't edging the grass. He was running the metal blade along the sidewalk itself, scraping the concrete. Scritch, scritch, scritch. That sound is what made me stop. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp. It didn't belong with birds and morning air. He was shaving the asphalt like he was cleaning an invisible line no one else could see. I stood there for a second, watching him, trying to figure out if there was a reason. Maybe paint, maybe gum, maybe a weird habit. "Good morning, Mr. Miller," I called out, forcing a friendly tone. He stopped. But he didn't turn the way people turn. His body stayed facing the sidewalk, shoulders square, hands still holding the tool. Only his neck moved, tilting backward farther than it should have. For a second, I honestly thought I was about to watch something snap. Then he rotated the rest of his torso like a stiff mannequin being repositioned. His smile was stretched. That's the only word I have for it. Like he was putting effort into keeping it on his face, pinning the corners of his mouth upward with a willpower. "Ethan, good morning." His voice was way too cheerful, like he'd practiced the line. "The grass is growing fast, don't you think?" I let out an awkward laugh. "Mr. Miller, you're running the edger over the concrete." His smile didn't change. He took one step toward me. His arms didn't move naturally with it. They stayed hanging straight down at his sides, swaying slightly, like they were loose and rubbery. The edges must be kept clean, Ethan, he said. If the edge isn't clean, the rest leaks out. You don't want anything leaking out, do you? I didn't know what to say. It wasn't just strange wording. It was the way he delivered it, like it wasn't a conversation at all. Like he was reading a rule out loud. A cold weight formed in my stomach. I mumbled something polite and got into my car. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. He went right back to scraping the metal against the sidewalk. Scritch, scritch, scritch. I tried to forget it. People are weird. Small towns have eccentric people. That's what I told myself. Then it happened at work. I'm an architect. Nothing high profile, mostly commercial projects, renovations, office spaces. My supervisor, Daniel, is the kind of guy who never seems stressed. He's always controlled, always steady, always the same calm tone, even when a client is being impossible. Last Wednesday, I walked into his office without knocking because I needed a quick signature. The door was slightly open, and I didn't think. The lights were off. Daniel was sitting at his desk. He wasn't on his computer. He wasn't reading. He wasn't moving at all. Not even the small movement of someone breathing. He was just still. Not thinking still. Not lost in thought still. Static. Like someone had paused him. I stood in the doorway staring, waiting for him to blink. He didn't. I didn't hear him breathe. The room felt too quiet, like the air itself was holding back sound. I took a step back, and the door creaked. In that exact moment, so fast my brain struggled to catch up, Daniel turned his head toward me. He blinked 3 times quickly, like a reset. Then he leaned toward his computer and started typing like he'd been working all morning. "Ethan, good of you to come," he said without looking fully at me. "The East Wing project needs adjustments." My mouth was dry. "Daniel, are you okay? You seemed strange." His typing stopped. Slowly he lifted his head. His eyes were what scared me most. They didn't look angry. They didn't look sick. They didn't look tired. They looked empty, like the eyes of a dead fish at a market, glossy but lifeless, staring without seeing. "Sometimes we just need to rest, Ethan," he said. "There's no need to stay alert when no one is using the room." I felt something in my chest go cold. When no one is using the room. That wasn't a normal sentence. That wasn't even a normal thought. It was like he'd just told me the rules of a machine. I left his office with my legs feeling weak, as if gravity had increased when I stepped back into the hallway. For a while after that, I stopped bringing it up. I stopped asking questions. I tried to keep my head down. But once you notice something like that, you can't unsee it. You start catching little moments, tiny delays, smiles that come a half-second late, people repeating phrases like they're part of the town's script. The only person who felt real was Sarah from accounting. Sarah smoked behind the building where she thought nobody could see. Her hands always shook when she lit her cigarette. She didn't talk much. But when she did, she sounded like she was holding herself together with string. One afternoon, I went out back and found her there. I didn't bother easing into it. I was too worn out from holding the fear in. "Sarah," I said quietly, "what is happening in this place?" The way she looked at me made my stomach drop. She didn't look confused. She didn't look curious. She looked terrified. She dropped her cigarette like it burned her and grabbed the front of my shirt with both hands. "Shut up," she whispered. Her palms were sweaty. Her fingers dug into my collar hard enough to hurt. "They feel it when you notice," she said. "They don't like being observed. If you see something wrong, you smile. If you see someone standing in the dark, you pretend you didn't. Understand? You only survive in Silver Creek if you pretend to be as empty as they are." "Who are they?" I asked, my voice barely working. Her eyes flicked toward the building, toward the windows, like she expected someone to be watching us. "The things that live in the houses," she said. "The things wearing our neighbors' clothes. Just act normal. If you break character, they correct you." I tried to ask more, but she let go of my shirt and stumbled away like being near me was dangerous. The next day, Sarah's desk was gone. Not just empty. Gone. Her chair, her computer, her little nameplate, everything. I asked Daniel about her as casually as I could manage. He stared at me for a moment too long. "Sarah," he said. "We've never had anyone by that name." I felt my face go hot. She sat in accounting. "You must be confusing us with another branch," Daniel said smoothly. "Drink some water, Ethan. You look pale." That was when I understood what correct meant. They didn't just take her. They erased her. Like she'd never existed at all, except in my head. After that, I stopped asking questions out loud. I started practicing smiling at the right times. I started copying how people here acted, even when it made my skin crawl. I nodded when I was supposed to nod. I laughed when they laughed. I kept my face neutral and pleasant. But the worst part didn't stay outside. 3 days ago, I started noticing little things in my house, small changes. Easy to dismiss if you want to protect your sanity. A picture frame tilted slightly on the wall when I know I set it straight. A closet door cracked open when I know I closed it. A kitchen chair pulled out by a few inches, like someone had sat there and stood up. I told myself it was me being distracted. New house, new routine, stress. Then last night happened. I was watching TV in the living room. The room was almost completely dark except for the light from the screen. I was halfway through some dumb show I wasn't really paying attention to when that feeling hit me. The feeling of being watched. I turned my head toward the corner near the bookshelf. There was a figure standing there. Mr. Miller. The same vest. The same smile. Half his body in shadow, like the darkness was holding him. He wasn't moving. Not shifting his weight. Not blinking. Just standing and watching me in the dark of my own living room like he belonged there. A scream got stuck in my throat. Sarah's voice came back to me, sharp and urgent. "Pretend you didn't notice. Don't break character." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the remote. My heart was pounding like it wanted out of my ribs. I forced myself to yawn. "Man, I'm tired," I said to the empty air, my voice cracking. "Think I'll head to bed." I stood up. To get to my bedroom, I had to pass within 2 feet of him. I didn't look at him directly. I kept my eyes fixed on my bedroom door, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw his head track me. His body stayed still. Only his neck turned, rotating smoothly like a hinge, like a mechanical axis. I went into my bedroom and closed the door slowly. I didn't lock it. Because locking it would be admitting I knew he was there. Locking it would be breaking character. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling for what felt like hours. I tried to control my breathing so it wouldn't sound panicked. I listened to the house. Every so often I heard something being dragged down the hallway. very slowly, like someone pulling something heavy without lifting it, like something being repositioned inch by inch. I stayed frozen until the sound stopped. I don't know if I slept. I don't think I did. Now I'm in the bathroom. I left my bedroom 10 minutes ago because I heard my front door handle turn. Then I heard Daniel's voice in my hallway, calm and familiar in the way nightmares can use familiar things. "Ethan, you forgot to hand in the report yesterday. I came to collect it." "Oh, it's 3 in the morning." Nobody collects reports at 3 in the morning, and he didn't knock. He just came in like my house was an extension of the office. I can hear his footsteps now. They're heavy, like he doesn't know how to distribute weight in a human body. Each step lands too flat, too sure. He's walking through my bedroom. "Ethan," he called again, closer. "I know you're awake. I can hear your heart. It's making a lot of noise." "Why is it making so much noise? That seems abnormal." I'm holding back tears. I want to scream. I want to climb out the bathroom window and run until my feet bleed. But if I leave this house, the other things out there will see me. The whole complex belongs to them. The whole town belongs to them. His feet are outside the bathroom door now. I can see the shadow under it. He isn't knocking. He's just standing there, like he's waiting for a machine to finish a cycle. "Ethan," he said, and his voice isn't Daniel's anymore. It sounds hollow, like the sound is traveling through a metal pipe. "Open the door. Let's fix that noise in your chest. You'll feel much better once you stop feeling afraid. It's just an adjustment. In 5 minutes, you'll be like us. Perfect." The door is shaking now. I can hear wood cracking. I don't think I have much time. If you find this, please don't come to Silver Creek. If you ever see a town that's too perfect, run. If you meet a neighbor with a smile that looks pinned in place, run. If you notice the silence moving in a straight line, run. They're forcing the door. I'm going to put my phone in my pocket. I'm going to stand up, open it, and smile. I'll tell him I had a nightmare. I'll pretend until the last second because the rule is clear. You only survive if you pretend you don't know. But I think this time I noticed too much. And I don't think they're here to scare me anymore. I think they're here to make me match